Welcome to another episode of Brand Evangelism Podcast. I'm Tim Salmonson, and today I am with Charles Hopkins. He is a tax strategist, and I know that being in the month of April, we have all suffered through having to pay taxes. And Charles doesn't just work with the average taxpayer. He works with, we say, high net worth people who agonize about their taxes. I know Charles, or I met Charles at Myron Golden Studios, and he actually works with Myron. In fact, one thing that I found about Charles is he's a popular guy here. Just hanging out with him. Seems like all the who's who of the conference are coming over to say hi. So I wanted to make sure to talk with him and share with him, or have him share with you some of the things that he's doing and how he's helping to create value in the world. So, Charles, people don't know much about you. I don't know a whole lot about you, other than you help people save a whole lot of money.
Absolutely.
Could you introduce yourself a little bit and explain how you do that?
Absolutely. Thank you for that intro, Tim.
Of course.
Like you said, Charles Hopkins. Who am I? Ultimately, I am a father. I'm also a husband and a business owner who has been in the tax industry 19 years now, so nearly two decades.
Wow.
I got started with the IRS as a volunteer, actually.
For real?
Yeah, and I volunteered because in my tax class in college, you got extra credit if you volunteer to work with the IRS.
Okay.
So I did that, and what I found was there's a gift in helping people. Like the joy you feel from just helping people, it feels great. And we were doing people's taxes for free.
Right.
And but what it gave me is a wealth of knowledge. It gave me a foundation to build on. And then each year I just started helping my friends and families do their taxes still for free.
Right.
And then we look up, and I'm married. I got married my senior year in college.
Wow.
So we look up, and my wife was like, look, you got about 40, 50 people coming over here, and you're doing their taxes. You need to start charging if it's going to take away from the family like this.
Yeah.
So I said, okay.
And you were working at that time, obviously, but volunteering your time. What were you doing work-wise?
Work-wise, I was an accountant. So my very first job out of college was Dell. So
Okay.
I did cost accounting for Dell.
Okay.
Yeah. And in the daytime, I was like, a corporate accountant. And at night, I'm like actually in Starbucks or at the person's home doing their taxes. Ultimately went from Dell to Apple. Then I did corporate accounting there for about 7.5 years.
Wow.
And long story short, you learn. I've done literally thousands of tax returns, somewhere near a little bit under 4,000 returns that I prepared myself firsthand.
Wow.
So, there's one thing to read in a book and see, hey, theoretically what you should and shouldn't do.
Right.
And then there's real life practical application where you know what will work and what won't work.
Right.
So I have a good amount of experience because of the sheer volume alone that I've been exposed to, I'll say.
So I noticed in your LinkedIn profile, because that's pretty much all the research that I've done, unfortunately, but it says that you invested over $1 million in your education. Can you explain a little bit? Like most doctors and lawyers, they don't even do that.
No. So what I've done is post-graduation, when you're running a business, you feel like you have the weight of the world on you sometimes.
Sure.
Not only do you have your client promises that you've made you need to fulfill on, but you have your team members, and they support their family with this income. You have my family as well, my direct family, like wife and children.
Of course.
I also have my siblings. I'm the oldest of 6 boys in my house.
That's a story.
Definitely. So I'm like, okay, in the Bible, King Solomon had a lot of responsibilities. He was responsible for all these people, the children of Israel.
Yeah.
And he's like, Lord, give me wisdom so I can help manage them.
Yeah.
That same thing, I read that when I was a teenager, and I always know that if you get enough knowledge, you get enough training, you get enough wisdom, you really don't have any problem if you apply that knowledge.
Right.
So I've been paying for wisdom all this time, in coaches and mentors and classes, courses, whatever is going to help give me that next edge. Probably about 300 to 350 of that is spent specifically on tax strategy training.
Okay.
And coaches, and then I've got another maybe $500,000 spent in business operations, and that other portion, maybe I think it's closer to 300, is spent on self-development, how to be the best version of myself.
Of course. Okay. Cool. Well, one of the things that I know, probably most of my audience is not going to be a high net worth person necessarily, but definitely a business person.
Maybe not yet.
Not yet.
They're building to it.
Yeah, that's right. The aspirational high net worth people. That's who we are.
Love it.
And I'd be really curious what advice you have, is because we just came out of a session where the guy laid out this amazing plan on how to kind of set up form your LLC or S Corp or C Corp or whatever. And I know that's stuff that you know a whole lot about, that it helps people to maximize what they're keeping and minimizing what they're giving to the government. Do you have any thoughts or suggestions for folks that are?
Yeah, absolutely. So wide range of where you can go. So depending on the audience is how I typically start. Like, hey, are you owning a bit or getting into starting a business? Do you already have an established business? Do you have any real estate? Are you trying to acquire rental real estate? But without knowing, I'll say generally, what the gentleman covered in there is actually, those are principles, core principles.
Right.
Three of those are 3 of the 5 principles that I actually cover in my book, Profit Without Worry.
Okay, Profit Without Worry, yeah.
Yep, Profit Without Worry. And so one of the things he mentioned, and I would also agree with, is he mentioned knowledge. You need knowledge. And I say educate. Okay. So, we all know they say knowledge is power, right?
Right.
And so sure it is, but really it's also the application of that knowledge where you're really going to see the real power manifest. And what do I mean by that? So for example, we all know if you get on fire, you do 3 things, right? You stop, you
drop, and roll.
And you roll.
Yeah.
And if you know that, and you're at a campfire, spark jumps on your shirt, and then literally you see your shirt on fire, you know what to do, but you're just like, you start panicking.
Yeah.
Exactly what's going to happen. Well, you'll be shirtless after a while.
Yeah.
Hopefully it doesn't catch a hold to your pants.
Yeah.
So the whole point is, sometimes we're in the we're past the information age. So information is at everyone's fingertips.
Absolutely.
But there's so much we don't know if we should apply it because we don't know if it's right. Well, what if I stop, drop, and roll it, then it doesn't work?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But the whole point is, if you're doing something, I'd like to say it's better than nothing. I guess sometimes doing the wrong thing can hurt you worse.
Right.
So make sure you're getting your knowledge from the right source, right? I think firefighters taught us that in elementary school, right?
Sure. So do you have recommendations?
Yes,
how do you know? You go to the IRS directly?
Yes, so you can go to the IRS directly. So all of these principles are really going to be found in the 2,200 pages of the tax code.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Right? And most people don't have time to sit there and read it. However, what I'd say is this. I'd say grab hold of these 3 things. 1, educate yourself on what type of taxes could be applicable in your situation. So if you have a primary residence, so you're owning instead of renting, well, you may want to get familiar with home ownership deductions like mortgage interest, real estate taxes. If you're going to have a property outside of your primary residence, that's going to be a rental property. Well, almost anything and everything you can use in your business, like not only mortgage interest and real estate, that's the only thing you can deduct from a home on the personal side.
Right.
But when you have a business now, you get to do the insurance on the home.
Okay.
You also get to do the maintenance, the lawn and all that.
Sure.
You also get to do the utilities. So you get to do any repairs, any renovations. So anything you're doing to that rental property is now a business expense.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And so at the end of the day, I'd say do these 3 principal things. 1, educate yourself on what's out there. Secondly, form a structure. Everything he was saying was spot on. A structure, in this case, I'd start off with a financial structure, which would be, I'd say, record keeping. That's the number 1 thing you need, okay. I'd say. Record keeping is a digital accounting log,
right.
or like a digital receipt list categorized. Does that make sense?
Right.
So all your financial statements is all of your eating out, all of your supplies in your business, all of your payroll, all of your wages, all summed up and totaled into different categories.
Okay.
Because when you're preparing your tax return, the IRS only has like 1 or 2 lines for revenue. You know, hey, how much did you make and how much did you pay in refunds or discounts?
Right.
And then the other one is you have all these other lines to show expense categories.
Right.
And the reason why it's important to break all your expenses down and expenses and not just tell the IRS, hey, I made 100K, I spent 90K. And then they're like, okay, well, in what areas? So, you know, we're kind of on the honor system for our tax code, meaning when you submit your tax return, you don't have to submit all your receipts with it.
Right.
But what they do is they have something called a DIFF score, DIFF.
Okay.
And what they're looking at is based on your industry. So when you're doing your tax return, don't select 99999 as the code of industry that you're in, because that's the miscellaneous code and everyone selects that. That's the most highly audited code.
Okay.
Select what your actual industry is, like the closest you can. Yeah. So if you're a photographer, you want to go into the videography area.
Okay.
Click on photographic services.
Right.
Make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And then it's going to compare you with other photographers and see if your expenses are in alignment. Now, if your photography expenses are in alignment with others, well, guess what? You're good to go.
Right.
But the more areas where you're off compared to other photographers, then a flag is generated.
Okay.
The more red flags you have generated, the more likely you are to be selected for audit.
That's huge. Okay.
Make sense?
So the third?
So I'd say knowledge, structure, and number 3, which is most important, this is the documentation.
Okay.
So receipts, that's a form of documentation. Actual LLC formation, that is documentation. Exactly.
Okay.
Your EIN, like, it's basically evidence. So if you get called into court, we all know if somebody has the right evidence or sufficient evidence, then they'll win the case.
Right.
It's the exact same.
Okay. So your odometer on your car, for example, keeping track of how far you drive.
Yes, and I wouldn't do that manually these days. There's an app I like called Mile IQ.
Okay.
And really, it's just on automatically. It's just tracking everywhere you go. Not just sit down at the end of the day, or at least once a week, you swipe left or
for personal.
Exactly, and right for business. And
okay.
I mean, it makes things easy.
Yeah. So that would be like a tool in the number 2 category of the platform that you use, or the way that you keep track of your receipts, mm-hmm. or your numbers, whether it's QuickBooks. I think most people are going to be familiar with a QuickBooks type of thing.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That's good. So to meet with number 1, educate, I'd say you want to have a tax plan. You want to get a tax plan created,
okay.
because that's going to ask a ton of questions about you, figure out what opportunities there are to save, and then build a bridge from there.
How do you like? That's something I've never done.
Sure.
And I would suspect that is that something you got to hire someone out to develop?
That's a great question. So right now we're in a day and age where almost everything is at your fingertips.
Okay.
And so believe it or not, there are apps for tax planning, but not all apps are created equal.
Of course.
So there are some I like. For example, there's a software called Instead. Instead does a really good job. You can upload your previous year's tax returns into it, and it'll create a plan or give you some ideas for opportunities of savings that could happen. Okay. So Instead is nice.
Yeah.
And part 2, the structure, QuickBooks, of course, is really good as well. Also, Wave Accounting, I think, is really good. It's probably it's comparable to QuickBooks. It used to be free, so I used to recommend that one all the time.
Right.
It's not free, but it's not as much as QuickBooks right now.
Okay.
And for number 3, the documentation, also QuickBooks can capture receipts as well.
Okay.
So you do want to capture receipts and upload that into your QuickBooks, although it's not like you can still win a tax court case with just your bank statements, but then you have to make sure you have a clear set of documentation. What do I mean by that? So you have an actual corporation of some kind or business documents showing that you have a business name like a DBA or an EIN. Those two things are going to allow you to get a business bank account.
Right.
That business bank account, you only want all your income coming in to go in there for the business, and anything you spend on business, it needs to come out of that account. If you start mixing it up and you have your Netflix subscription coming out of there, right, and you start having your, just random expenses that aren't business, right, well, in case of an audit, the IRS can say, hey, look, they're commingling funds. Right. So in that case, because they're commingling, we need receipts for everything, and if you don't provide it, you won't be able to get a write-off for it. Yeah. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally.
So if you keep everything airtight, so you can just rely on the bank statements.
It's always better to have a credit card that's dedicated to the business.
Yes, and has the business's name on it.
Okay.
And the business account should have the business's name on it. Because where a lot of people get in trouble in the beginning when you're first getting started, they're mixing everything up. They have no dedicated accounts for anything.
Totally.
right. And what ultimately happens is the IRS don't know because in the beginning you end up investing more than you make. So yes, the IRS doesn't know if you're a hobby or a true business.
Right.
And if you're a hobby, you can't deduct anything. Well, what separates a business from a hobby? Documentation. Like, does this person have an intent to run a business, or is it something they do for fun?
Yeah.
Right. If you're running a fishing business, a fishing guide business, yeah, and you're just a person who loves fishing, and you're really not charging people much money, it's just a clever way to write off all your fishing tackle, right. all your expenses for you to,
and your new pole,
things you're going to do anyway. Sure. IRS knows about that. Okay. But the difference between a business and that is literally, do you have a website? Did you have a business email? Like, the intention behind setting a business up properly, it matters.
Okay, I gotcha. Well, we got to head back into the conference, but I did want to know, or let people know, how they might connect with you. I did see that you offer a challenge. I don't know if you're still doing that.
Yeah.
But I think that I know I'd be really interested.
I do.
In that.
So I'm going to be launching another challenge this June. Okay. This is the Forever Tax Cut Challenge. Help give yourself a permanent tax cut using permanent tax saving strategies. Strategies that you put into place 1 year, and if you do it right, these strategies can save you on taxes the rest of your life, or the rest of the life you're in business. Yeah. Wow. So Forever Tax Cut Challenge, and also you can find me on Instagram, Charles Hopkins Tax, and my YouTube is coming as well shortly.
And LinkedIn, that's where I found him.
That's right.
Super. Charles, thank you so much.
Tim. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you, everyone. And if you have any questions, find Charles online, and I'm sure this guy will hook you up. So thanks so much, and have a great day.